Hi, this is Mark from Skywagon University again. Today we're going to be talking about PA-32's, the series, mainly this one, because this is a 1978 Piper Lance. So I'll be saying Lance, but it's more pronounced in America Lance. But it's a Piper Lance 2 Turbo, T-tail. So they made these in 78 and 79, so we're going to be talking about this, but a little bit about its lineage first, because we have the other Cherokees right here. So to go back in time a little bit, there was a cooling ball of a planet with a meteorite. No, that's too far. To go back to the Cherokee line, this is a Cherokee 6. So they started the PA-32's with the Cherokee 6. Square wing, fixed gear, low tail, no turbo. So now to a Saratoga. The Cherokee 6 became the Lance with the square wing. We're going to look at that in detail. But after it became the Saratoga, which is also a PA-32, and it's a tapered wing, retractable gear, low tail, turbocharged. So the lineage would be Cherokee 6, Lance, Saratoga. Saratoga's stopped in like 2009. So now let's go and look in detail at the T-tail Lance, and we'll fly it around a little bit too. So the early PA-32's, the Cherokee 6 with the fixed gear, they had the tip tank and a main tank. In 78, they had a tip tank and a main tank. In 79, they had these two fuel tanks. So here's the filler, here's a tank, here's a tank. You fill this, and it runs down a tube between them, a tube, and it fills this. So there's a sight gauge on top of the wing, you might be able to see that here, that gives you an indication of what's in this tank, because obviously if you look in the gas cap, you can't see the gas. So it's a little bit disorienting where after you've used 3 or 4 gallons of fuel, you open that cap and you're looking at bare metal. But you could have 60 gallons in it. So it gives you an idea of the fuel configuration. 78 and 79 also is the only 2 years of T-tailed Lance. So this is a PA-32 RT300. That's the T. It's turbo, but it's also a T-tail. The Cherokee Sixes also had this wing, and in 79 this fuel configuration and the club seating. So T-tailed Lances always have club seating. So front end, the Lances are, if it was a low tail non-turbo, it would just be a 300 horsepower IO 540 Lycoming retractable Cherokee 6. The Lance, this turbo Lance, it's got a 300 horsepower turbocharged intercooled engine in it, and it's actually upside down. So if we look at the front of the cowling on this, is a modification. The original plane from the factory would have had a big shark mouth on here with a big landing light in the front and no intakes here, just a big, like a guppy right here, huge. This is a Turbo Plus cowling modification. It's the lower cowl, and it allows you to have an intercooler. The intercooler is in here. The cooling air goes through the intakes here and then up through the engine and out of these vents on top, rather than through the front and down out of some cowl flaps. That is the same configuration, that's hot. That's the same configuration as on the Saratogas. So a Turbo Saratoga has this front end, but it's got the tapered wings with the single fuel tanks. So the whole point of showing you this plane is because it's a T-tail, 78, 79, Lance 2 Turbo. So let's go back and have a look at the tail. Back at the tail, it looks all very normal up until about there, and then you've got the horizontal, the stabilator, the whole thing up there. It's out of reach. I mean, I'm like 5'10", and it's above my arm's length, so it's way up there. It's quite handy for being in a hangar because you can walk around the plane here and you don't hit anything, and the plane just sort of ends in a rounded sort of back bit right here. But the T-tail, there's a lot of myth and legend talked about the T-tails. Somebody tells somebody that the T-tails have low authority, and then they tell somebody, and before you know it, there's a rumor out there that they're not very good and blah, blah, blah. T-tails don't have as much elevator authority as a low tail, because the prop wash coming past the tail here is obviously going to be more responsive. So if you wanted to pull it off the ground early or flare early, you will feel less elevator authority in a T-tail. But in cruise, it's going to be, you won't even notice any difference. So it's not weird or bad, it's just slightly different. So you get used to flying one of these with a T-tail and it becomes normal. And I suppose if you then got into a low-tailed big Cherokee and flew it, you'd think it had like power steering, but it's only at low airspeed. So if you take off and land at 70, you're never going to notice the difference. It's 9 feet high, so it might be a hangar and a consideration for hangarage. But they are 27 feet long and 32 feet wide, and a Cessna is 36 feet wide, so it's quite a short wing on them. But these planes are kind of unique, and I haven't had one in for a long time, so I just thought I'd show you it just because of the T-tail and dispel some of the perhaps myth and legend associated with it. And also there is an Arrow turbo with a T-tail, which is just the normal Arrow but with a different tail on it, that was produced in similar years to this. So 79 last year of T-tail, 80 last year of the Lance was finished then, and the Saratoga came out. And the Saratoga never had a T-tail, and it always has a tapered wing. So square wings on Lances, square wings on Cherokee Sixes, tapered wings on Saratogas, and they're longer. And very interestingly, the Saratoga does not have, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure, the Saratoga does not have the AD on the wing spar that is plaguing all these Cherokees. And then to talk slightly about that, we'll just go around the front. So if you've got a square wing Cherokee, it's in the wing spar AD. And I won't get into real detail about it because you can look it up and find out more about that, and it's perhaps even a separate video. The AD consists of cutting 2 holes underneath the wing, forward of the spar, this position here, but underneath the wing, just to allow it to be inspected. And it sounds like a big deal, major surgery, but there's a kit from Piper, and it's an inspection panel, and it looks just like any other inspection panel, and it's not that hard to put in. Once it's in and you've inspected it, you're good. You do not need to do that AD until the airframe has 4,000 hours on it. This plane has 2,900 hours on it, so it's 1,100 hours from even needing it. But there is an equation you've got to work out that total time with. It's not just boom, the hours in the logbooks. It's a factored total time. So depending on the life and the formula and the factorizing, you do this math calculation that gives you the factored total time, and that is the time that means you do or don't have to do the AD. If they've been commercially operated and they've got 100-hour inspections, there's way less hours on them. So an 8,000-hour commercial plane could only have a factored total time of 3,000 or 4,000. But anyway, if you're looking at or own a square wing Cherokee, the wing spar AD, which isn't expensive to do, is a consideration. So now I'm going to do a hot start because it was running, and I have to have the radios on because otherwise the mic doesn't work. So a hot start would be full throttle, full mixture, boost pump till it stabilizes, boost pump off, mixture to idle, known lean. Now I crank it until it becomes the leanness that it wants to start at, should be about 5 or 6 seconds. Clear. Becoming leaner. 3, 2, 1. Start. Rich mixture, throttle to idle before it revs.
Final 2-3 Placerville.
Set up the RPM. Okay, we got a 182.06 on the taxiway, and we got 2 planes landing, so we have to wait for those. Placerville traffic, Cherokee 30406, departing runway 23, just once around the pattern, Placerville. So I'll talk more about it later, but the T-tail on these planes, if you're used to them, they're absolutely fine, but if you're not used to them, they don't have as much authority as a low tail, so you just got to be prepared for that. But here we go.
Placerville traffic, Cessna 1777, position and wait on 23, Placerville.
Nose up, and she's up. Bit of right rudder. No more useful runway, gear coming up. Flaps are coming up, trimming.
Steve, there's a spot right next to me. Coming down.
And I'm just going to pull the turbocharging manifold pressure back to 30 inches, RPM to 24.
We'll circle around and depart to the east.
At Placerville, Cherokee 406 is on left crosswind for 23 at Placerville, full stop. So if you aren't used to that tail, you'd think that used a lot of elevator to get it to take off. But if you're used to it, it's completely normal. It's just slightly different. It's like a T-tailed arrow versus a normal tailed arrow. But in cruise, where the airflow is at cruise speed over it, you barely feel any difference between this and a Saratoga or a
low-tailed Lance or a Cherokee 6. Placerville, 406 left downwind for 23 at Placerville, full stop. This plane is best in its element at altitude in cruise. It's set up for cross countries. It's not really a touch and go kind of plane. It's a big cross country cruiser. So I'm easing the power back. It's not really in its turbocharged manifold pressure at the moment, so there's no cooling to worry about, plus it's a hot day. And I am well below gear speed, so I'm selecting gear down. Placerville, 406, left crosswind for 23 at Placerville, full stop. Putting in first stage of flaps. A bit of trim. More flaps. Placerville, 406, final for 23 at Placerville, full stop. Slightly overshot that. Gear is down, mixture is rich, prop is set, flaps are on. Short final for Placerville. We're doing 80. Now because it's got a long nose like any of the PA-32's, it's going to look like a massive flare, but it's not that. Mains, nose, power off, flaps away.
Placerville traffic, longitude 131 Delta Bravo is 2.5 to the southeast. Bringing on a left downwind for 23 Placerville.
Placerville, Cherokee 406, clear of 23 at Placerville.
7 is at 4,600, heading north-northeast back to Lake Tahoe.
So, in conclusion, 78 turbo Lances, which is the T-tail, the Lance 2. Future videos coming up. We're going to be doing a Myers 200, a very rare and exceptional plane. Interview with its owner on a flight, that'll be a good one. And then we're going to do a early Cessna 180, flight characteristics, landing characteristics, and a lot of like aerial footage of it rather than just talking about it and walking around it, just because it's a beautiful version of itself. So thanks very much for watching. This is Mark at Skywagon University. Subscribe on the little link right here. Click on subscribe and on the bell notification thingy, and it'll let you know when other videos come up. And thanks very much for watching.